Today's tale in the Ulster cycle is the boyish deeds of Cu Chulainn. Ooh, a great stories. And now, a heroic tale of one of the most important figures in the Irish mythological cycle, and who has great association with the Vorgu, as well as she gets into kind of a lot of trouble with Vorgu because, he doesn't understand that she's there to help. So these are about his Cu Chulainn's boyish deeds. Let's see what kind of trouble the mighty hero Cu Chulainn gets into as he's a boy. I mean, he's a boy. He really can't get into that much trouble, can he? Well, we'll find out. Among the most striking of many narratives dealing with Cu Chulainn is a group of episodes from his childhood. The incidents in the following selection are not only serve to illustrate his prodigy, a trait which is widespread among the heroes of all folk, but it also exemplifies the conditions of the child fosterage among the ancient Irish. This and other tales of Cu Chulainn's youth are incorporated into the great Ulster epic, the Cattle Raid of Cully, which we will get to again as we progress through the Ulster cycle, where they are represented as told to King Ali and Queen Mab and of Conrad by several of the Ulster exiles enlisted in the Conquerate army. They form a body of tradition which was probably very old at the time when this epic was composed.
Motion detected at the blink doorbell.
This boy, said Fergus, was reared in his father's and his mother's house by the seaside northwards in the plain of Murhan, where someone gave him an account of the macro or boy corpse of Emin Macha, how that Compere divides his day into the three parts. First, being devoted by watching the boar corpse at their spot, especially that of hurling. The second, to the playing of chess and draughts. The third, pleasurable consuming of meat and drink until drowsiness sets in, which is then promoted by the extensions of minstrels and musicians to induce favorable plasticity of mind and disposition. And for all that were banished from him, concluded Fergus, by my word I swear that neither in Ireland nor Scotland there is a warrior, his Compere's counterpart. The little lad then, as for having heard of this, one day told his mother that he was bent on a visit to Emin Macha to test the boy corpse at, their own sports. She, of course, objected, and that he was immature and ought to wait until some crowned warrior or other more confidential of the Corbric should, in order to issue his safety, bind over the boar corpse to keep the peace toward him. He told his mum that was too long an outlook, and that he could not wait, and that she had to do with send him on course for Erin Macha, since he did not know in which direction it lay. It is a weary way from here, said his mother. Far between thee and it lies Sabfrut. Give me the bearings, he said. And so she did. Away he went then, taking with him his hurley of brass, his ball of silver, his throwing javelin, and his toy spear, with which equipment he fell to shortening the way for himself. He did it thus. With his hurley he would strike the ball and drive great distance, and then he pelted the hurley after it and drove it just as far again. And then he threw his javelin, lastly the spear, which drove he would make a playful rush after them all, picking up the hurley and ball and javelin, while before the spear tip could touch the earth, he had caught the missile by the other end. Keep in mind, Cu Chulainn is very young at this point, like way before 10. In due course, Cu Chulainn reached Mecca, where he found the boy corpse, thrice 15 number, hurling on the green and practicing martial exercise, with Combeber's son, Fralman, at the head. The lad drove right away into them and took hand in game. He got the ball between his legs and held it there, not suffering it to travel higher up than his knees or well lower than his ankle joints, and so making it impossible for them to get at in a stroke or any other way to touch it. In this manner he brought it along and sent it home over the goal. In utter amazement, the whole corpse looked on. But Famulin Mac Colberer cried, "Good now, boys, all together, meet this youngster as he deserves, and kill him! Because it is taboo to have such one join us, to you to interfere in our game, without first having had the chivalry to produce the guarantee that his life should be respected." Together then, all at once, they attacked him. An avenged violation of your taboo, for we know that he is a son of some petty Ulster warrior, such as without safe conduct, and is not accustomed to intrude into our play. The whole of them assailed Cu Chulainn simultaneously, sent their hurleys at his head. He, however, parried all the 150, and was unharmed. The same with the balls, which he fed it off with fists, forearms, palms alone. Their thrice 50 toy spears received in his little shield, and still unhurt. In turn now, Cu Chulainn went among them, and laid low 50 of the best. 5 more of them, said Fergus, come past the spot where myself and Colberer sat in chess play, with the young lad close in their wake. "Hold, my little fellow," said Colberer. "I see this is no gentle game that thou thus play with the boy corpse." "And good cause I have to," cried Cu Chulainn, after coming out from a far land to them. "I've not had a guest reception." "How now, little one," said the king. "Knowest thou not the boy corpse conditions, that a newcomer must have them bound by their honour to respect his life?" "I knew it not," said the boy. "Otherwise I had confirmed and taken measure beforehand." "'Tis well," said the king. "Take it now upon yourselves to let the boys go safe." "We do," the boy corpse answered. They resumed play. Cu Chulainn did as he would with them, and again laid out 50 of them on the ground. Their fathers deemed they could not be dead. Not a thing, however, it was merely that his blows and pushes, repeated charges, he so terrified them that they took the grass. "What on earth is he at with them now?" said Colberer. "I swear by my gods," said Cu Chulainn, "that until they in turn come under my protection and guarantee, I will not lighten hand off them." Thus they did at once. "Now," said Fergus in conclusion, "I submit that a youngster who did all this when he was just 5 years old," I'll repeat that just in case you weren't paying attention, Cu Chulainn laid out all these boar corpses when he was 5 and got them to bow down. And some of these boy corpses were, older than him in their teens, and he was 5. Just take that in. Needs not exile by our wonder, because now being turned of 17 years, he is a cavalry of Cu Chulainn cut a 4-pronged pole in the rest, that he should have killed a man or 2, or 3, or even indeed by 4. Colbeer's son, Cormac Algar, spoke now, saying, "In the year after that," so when Cu Chulainn was 6, "the same little boy did another deed." "And what is that?" Ailill asked. "Well," continued Cormac, "in Ulster there was a good smith, the artificer named Cullen. He prepared a banquet for Colbeer and travelled to Mecca to bind it to him. He begged Colbeer to beg with him his only moderate number of warriors, because neither land nor domain had he, but, merely the product of his hammer and his anvil, and, of his tongs. Colbeer promised that he would bring no more than a small company. Cullen returned home to make his last preparations. Colbeer remained in Mecca until the meeting broke up and the day came into close. Then the king put on his light, convenient traveling garb and betook him to the garden in order to bid Boycorp's farewell before he started. There, however, he saw a curious sight. 150 youths at one end of the green, and at the other a single one he had taken the goal against in the crowd of them. Again, when they played the hole game, and it was their turn to aim at the hole, it began to his defend. He stopped all thrice, 50 balls just at the edge of the hole, so that not one of them went in. When the defense was theirs, and it was his turn to shoot, he would hold the entire set without missing one. When the game was to tear another one's clothes off, he would have mantles off them all, while the full number could not even pull out his brooch. When this was to upset the other, he would knock over 150 that he could not scratch him to the ground. All which, when Colbert had witnessed, he said, "I congratulate the land unto which the little boy comes. Were his full-grown deeds to prove consistent with his boyish exploits, he would indeed be of some solid use." To this doubtful expression, Fergus objected, saying to Colbert that this is not justifiably said, for according to this little boy grows, so also will his deeds increase with him. "Have the child called to us," said the king, "that he may come with us and share the banquet." "I cannot go thither just now," said the boy. "How so?" said Colbert. "The Boycorps have not yet had enough of play." "It will be too long for us to wait until they had," said the king. "Wait not at all. I will follow after you." "But, young one, knowest thou the way?" "Oh, I know the trail of thy company, of the horses and the chariot tracks." Thereupon Colbert stated. Eventually he reached Culainn's house and received, in becoming fashion, fresh rushes were laid, and they fell to the banquet. Presently the smith said to Colbert, "Good now, O king, has thou anyone promised that this night would follow thee into this dwelling?" "No, not one," answered Colbert, quite forgetting the little boy. "But wherefore do you ask?" "It is only that I have an excellent band dog, from when his chain's taken off, no one may dare be near him. For saving myself, he knows not any man, and in him resides a strength in 100. Colbert said, "Loose him then, and let him guard this place." So Chulainn did, and the dog made the circuit of his country, and then took up his usual position, whence to watch the house, and there he crouched with his head on his paws. Surely an extraordinary cruel, fierce, and savage dog was he. As for the Boycorps, until the time to separate, they continued in Aramaca. They then dispersed each to his own parents' house, or his nurses, or his guardians. For the little fellow, remember, of 6, trusting to the tale as Alfred struck out to Cu Chulainn's house, with his club and his ball shortened the way for himself as he went. Soon as he came to the evergreens of Culainn's fort, and the band dog became aware of him, and gave tongue in such a wary that he is heard throughout the countryside. Not was it to carve the little boy discreetly as far as a feast he could be mend, but at one gulp to shallow him down. The child was wrought without all reasonable means of defense. Therefore, as the dog charged him, open-jawed, he threw his playing ball down the throat with great force, which mortally punished the creature's insides. Cu Chulainn seized him by the hind legs and banged him against the rock to such purpose that he strewed off the ground into broken fragments. Again, 6 years old. The whole company within heard the bang dog's challenge, that sounded of which Colbert said, "'Tis no good luck has brought us to our present trip." "Your meeting?" said the others. "I mean that little boy, my sister Darce's son, Sitanta Macshugluth, had promised to come after me, and even now must be killed by the band dog." To the man the heroes rose, and therefore the fort's doors were thrown open, and they stormed ramparts to seek him. Speedy as they were, yet did Fergus outstrip them. He picked up the boy, hoisted him on his shoulder, and carried him to Colquhoun. Cu Chulainn himself had come out, and there he saw the bang dog lying in scraps and pieces, which was a heart's vexen to him. He went back indoors and said, "Thy father and thy mother are welcome both, but most unwelcome thou." "Why, what hast thou thought against this little feather?" asked Concobar. "It was no good luck that inspired me to make my feast of thee, O Concobar. My dog now be gone. My substance is but substance wasted. My livelihood means a living set in all astray. Little boy," he continued, "thou was a good member of my family. Thou hast tookest from me a safeguard of remnant of flocks and of herds."
Motion detected at the beginning. You're at the back door.
"Be not angered, Threat," said the child, "for in this manner myself I will produce a just reward." "And what might that be?" inquired Concobar. The little boy replied, "If in all Ireland there be a whelp of that dog's breed, by me, he shall be nurtured till he is fit for action, as was his sire. In the meantime, I, O Chulainn, myself will do the bane dog service, in guarding of thou cattle and substance and stronghold." "Well, thou hast made the award," said Concobar, and Catholic the Druid chimed in, declared that this is not only person could have done it better, and that henceforth the boy must bear the name Cu Chulainn, Cull's hound. The youngster objected. "I like my name better. Sent the Mixurduth." "Say not so," Concobar reminisced, "for all men in the world shall have their mouths full of that name." And yes, it kind of is a mouthful to say. The boy answered that, on those terms, the name would be well pleasing to him, and in the way it came to pass that it stuck to him. "Now, that little fellow," continued Comacos, and narrator of this, "who then, it was just touching 6 years of age, slew a dog from which a great company did not dare approach, that it was not reasonable to be astonished. Though the same at 17 should he be bear the province to kill a man or 2 or 3 or 4 in the cattle raid of Cully. Another exiled Ulsterman, Facha McPhiba, taking up the recital, said that in the very year following that adventure, 7, of the dog, the little boy had performed a 3rd exploit." "And what was that?" Ilda asked. "Why, it was Ceolfrith the Druid," continued Fabric, "who took the northeast Amanacha and taught his pupil there, being him 8 from among the students of his art. When one of them questioned him as to what the purpose of the day was more especially favourable, Ceolfrith told him that any stripling of he on this day should be the first time assuming arms and armour. The name of such, and one forever would surpass those of all Ireland's youth besides. His life, however, must be fleeting short." The boy was some distance away on the south side of Almeca. Nevertheless, he heard Ceolfrith's speech. He put off playing his suit and laid aside his implements of sport, and he entered Comper's sleeping house and said, "All good be thine, O king." Comper answered, "Little boy, what is thy request?" "I desire to take arms." "And who prompted thee to that?" "Comper the Druid," asked the boy. "Thou shalt not be denied," said the king, and forthwith gave him 2 spears with sword and shield. The boy some brandished the weapons, and in purpose broke them all to slivers and splinters. In short, whereas in Ermaca, Colper had 17 weapon equipments ready for the boy's corpse service, since whenever one of them took arms, Colper was who invested in him the outfit and brought him luck in using it. The boy made fragments of them all. Which done, he said, "O my master, O Colper, these arms are not good. They suffice me not." Thereupon the king gave him his own 2 spears, his own sword, and his own shield. In every possible way the boy tested them, even bent them point to point and hilt to butt, yet never them broke. They endured him. "Take, these arms are good," he said, "and worthy of me. Fair fall the land and the rain which this is the king has him whose arms and armor are these. Just then it was that Compa the Druid came in the house, wondering, and asked, "Is the little boy assuming arms?" "Aye, indeed," said the king. "'Tis not his mother's son we would care to see assume them on this day," said the Druid. "How now? It's not thyself that prompted him," said the king. "Not I, surely." "Brat," cried the king, "what meanest thou by telling me that it was so whereupon thou hast lied to me?" "O king, be not worth," the boy pleaded. "For he it was that prompted me when he instructed his other pupils. For when they asked him what special virtue lay in this day, he told them that the name of whoseever you should thereupon the first time take up arms would top the fame of all other Erin's men, nor thereby should he suffer resulting disadvantage, save that his life must be fleeting short." "And it is true of me," said Compa, "of noble and famous deed thou shalt be in Chanesty soon gone." "Little care I," said Cu Chulainn, "nor though I were one day or night in being, so far as long as my history of myself and doings may endure." And boy, do they ever. "Then," said Colruyt again, "well then, get to the chariot, boy, and proceed to test in thy own person whether mine utterance be truth." So Cu Chulainn mounted a chariot, and in driver's way he tended its strength and reduced it to fragments. He mounted a second with the same result. In brief, whereas in Erin Mecca for the boy corpse served Concobar and had 17 chariots, and likewise the little fellow smashed them all. And he said, "These chariots, O thine, O Concobar, are no good at all, nor worthy of me." "Where's Obermechrachna?" cried Concobar. "Here I am," he answered. "Prepare my own chariot and harness for my own my own horses for him there." The driver did this as well. Cu Chulainn mounted and tested the chariot, and it endured him. "This chariot is good," he said, "and my worthy match." "Oh, good now, little boy," said Uber. "Let the horses be turned out to grass." "Too early for that yet, Uber. Drive on and round Ermaka. Let the horses out to graze." They came to a place where the boar corpse was, and then the cry of them resounded. "These are the arms that thou hast taken, and the very thing indeed," he said. They wished him success in spoiling, winning, and in first slaying, but expressed regret that he was weaned away from them and their sports. Cu Chulainn assured them that it was not so, but that it was something in the nature of charm he had caused him to take arms on that day of all others. Again Orm pressured him in having horses taken out, and again the boy refused. He questioned the driver. "Whither leads this great road here running by us?" Albert answered that it ran to Arf Efor, the looking out ford, in Saberfield. The answer further questions which pleaded the charioteer. Cu Chulainn learned that that ford had that name from the fact that daily there was some prime warrior of Ulstermen kept watch in war to see that no foreign champion comes to, molest them. It being his duty to do single combat on behalf of his whole province, should poets and musicians be coming away from Ulster dissatisfied with the treatment, it was his duty, acting for the whole province, to solicit them with gold and other gifts. On the other hand, did the poet and musician enter the province, his duty was to see that they have safe conduct up to Concobar's bedside. This sentinel praise he would be theme of the first piece, and the driver's forms in verse, and the poet's word were rehearsed upon arriving at Erin Mecca. Cu Chulainn inquired whether Uber knew who it was on this particular day mounted guard. "Oh, I know it well," said the charioteer. "It is Coman MacAlgerman, surnamed Corrach the Victorious, Ireland's preeminent warrior." "Onward to that fjord, then, driver," cried the boy. Sure enough, at the water's edge came upon Conall, who received with him and his arms that you have taken up today, little boy. "It is indeed," Albert answered him. "May his arms bring him triumph and victory and drawing of first blood," said Como. "The only thing that is in my judgment thou hast presumably sued me them, seeing that is that thou art not fit for exploits." For all answer to the boy said, And what's thou here, Colonel? On behalf of the province I keep watch and ward. Come, said the youngster. For this day let me take the duty. Never say it, replied Colonel, for as yet thou hast not coped with the real fighting men. Then I will go down to the shallows of Loch Irchet to see whether I may draw blood on either friend or foe. And I, said Colonel, will go to protect thee and to safeguard so that thou wouldst not run into dangers on the border. Nay, said Cu Chulainn, come not. I will so, Colonel insisted, for will I were to permit thee all alone to frequent the border, the Ulstermen would avenge it on me. Colmar had his chariot made ready and his horses harnessed, and he started on his errand of protection, and, soon overtook Cu Chulainn, who had cut a matter short and gone on before. Now they had been abreast, the boy deemed that in future opportunity to do some deed of more mortal daring, Colm would never allow him to execute it. From the ground thereon he picked up a stone about the size of his fist, and took very careful aim at Colmar's chariot yoke. He broke it in two. The vehicle came down, and Conal was hurled prone, so that falling, that his mouth was brought over one shoulder. What is all this, boy? It was I, in order to see whether my marksmanship was good, and whether there is any material of a good warrior. Poison take both thy shot and thyself well, and though thy head should fall as peace for some of yonder foe, yet never foot further would I budge to save thee. The very thing I crave of thee, said the boy. And I do this in particular, man, because to you, Ulsterman, is a taboo, to the pierce of violence is done to you. With that, Comer went back to his poet at the fjord. As for the little boy Cu Chulainn, southwards he went, and went to the shallows of Loch Irchet until the day his end abode there. Then spoke Icbra. If to thee we mid venture to say too much, little one, I should be more than rejoiced when we insisted return to Mecca. For already of some time carving has been going on back there, and whereas thou hast thine appointed place to keep until thou come. Before Colm's knees, I, on the contrary, will do nothing but join the messengers and jesters of the house to fit in where I may, for reasons I may judge it now fitting. I were back in time and scumbled with them. Cu Chulainn ordered him to harness the chariot. With being done, they drove off, and Cu Chulainn inquired the name of a mountain that he saw. He learned that it was Sab Murren, and further asked the meaning of the white cairn that appeared on the summit. That was Firkin. The boy thought it was inviting, and ordered the driver to take him thither. Ichabod expressed the great reluctance, and Cu Chulainn said, Thou art a lazy loon, considering that this is my first adventure quest, and that it is my first trip with me. And if it is, Ichabod, and if I have ever reached out in Mecca forever, and for may be my last. Good now, driver, said the boy. When they were at the top of the hillock, all the directions point to me the topography of Ulster, a country in which I know not my way about. The charioteer from that position pointed the hills, and the plains and the lands and the strongholds of the province. 'Tis well, O driver, that when thou yon defend gently steam plain before us, southward, that is the plain of Magbrig. Protect it then, instruct me concerning the strongholds and forts in that plain. Then Urban pointed out to him Tara, and Tiltanu, Cherry North, and Brugger, and Augustmac Orc on Brony, and the stronghold of Nichan's scorned sons. Those are the sons of Nichan, to whom it's said that the number of Ulstermen now alive exceeds not the number of them fallen by their hands. The same, said Ethram. Away with us then to the stronghold of Israel's son. Woe waits on such a speech. Whoever be it thou goes there, I will not be one. Cu Chulainn said, Alive or dead, thither shall go, however. Alive then I go, and the dead I shall be left there. They made their way to the stronghold, and the little boy dismounted upon the green, and the green with this particular feature. In the centre stood the pillar stone, encircled with an iron collar. Test for heroic accomplishment, and bore the graven writing to the effect that any man, if only he were one that carried the arms, should enter on this green, must hold a taboo on him to depart from it without channeling a single combat of some dwellers in the stronghold. The little boy read the Ogham, threw his arms around the stone, and started it, eventually pitched it, the collar and all, into the water close at hand. In my poor opinion, ventured Ilber, it is no better so it be before. Well, I know that this time, at all events, thou wouldst find the object thy search in prompt and violent death. Good, good. O driver, speed me now to the chariot coverings, that I may sleep a while. Alas, that one should speak so the land of the foreman, and not of friends, is this. Ober obeyed, and on the green at once the little fellow fell asleep. Just then it was Father McNeeshan issued forth, and the sight of the chariot called out, Driver, do not unharness the horses. Elchin made answer, and he was still held the reins in his hand, a sign that he was not about to unharness them. What horses are these? Colchra's 2 pied balls. Even searched at Soch I took them be, said Foro, and who has brought them into these borders? A young bit of a little boy, whose for luck has taken arms today, and for purpose of showing him off in the fashion he's come to the borders. Neither let it thrive with him. Were it still that he is capable of action, is his deed a place of alive, he would go back to Ammon Makkah. Indeed, is not capable, nor could I roughly impart him, but is the 7th year of his birth. Here the little one lifted his face from the ground, not only that but his whole body, his feet blushed deep in the affront which he overheard. I am fit for action. But, Fomor rejoined, I'd rather not incline to hold that thou art not. Thou shalt know what behold of this matter. Let only us repair the fjord. But first go fetch thy weapons, the cowardly guise thou come hither. Nor for drivers, nor messengers, nor folk unarmed slay I. Fulber rushed headlong for his weapons, and Ilber advised the boy that he must be careful with him. Cu Chulainn asked the reason, and he was told that the man for McNickshin, inevitable to either point or any edge, invulnerable to any point or edge of any kind. Not to me should such things be spoken, for I will take my hand, my special feet, and tempted refined iron ball, which was still in the land, and forthwith missed backwards through his skull, and carried out his brain. So, leaving his head traversed with fair conduct for air, with that out came Fol McNish again, and the little lad grasped his ball and hurled it with exact effect foretold. And he took Foreman's head. Out of the stronghold now the second son emerged on the green, whose name was Tailf McNish, and he said, Belike thou little art inclined boast of that much. Cu Chulainn replied that the fall of a single warrior was for him no matter of boast. Tails told him that in that case he should not boast at all, because straightway he would perish by his hand. Then make haste for thy weapon, said the boy, for in cowardly guise thou comest hither. Away went Chancellor Epa repeated his admirations. Who is that? Asked the boy. He was told that it was not the son of Nishan, but it was also that he must be slain by the first stroke, or shot, or attempted whatsoever sought, or not at all. This is because the extraordinary activity and skill in which, in front of weapons, points he displayed to avoid them. Again, Cull objected that such language ought to be not addressed to him. He said, I will take my hands, Colbra's great spear, and venomous, and it shall pierce the shield over his breast, and after holding the heart within him, shall break 3 ribs in his side, is the farthest from me. 'Tis also the boy performed, and took the venomous in hand before the body touched the ground. Now came out the youngest of the sons, Pharaoh McNeeshan, and said, By simpletons they are with Woos hand do. Cu Chulainn asked him what he meant, and Pharaoh invited him to come away down upon and look upon the water with his foot, would not touch the bottom himself. On that instant darting to the fjord, Still Egbert warned the boy on his guard. "How is that then?" said Cu Chulainn. "Because this is Fenn McNeil, and the reason why he bears the name is that it is where a finnel, swallow, or weasel. Even for his swiftness he travels on the water's surface, nor can the whole world's swimmers attempt to cope with him." "Not to me ought such things be said," objected the boy. "For thou knowest the river which we have is in Mecca, while when the boy corpse break off from their sport to plunge into it for a swim, on either shoulder I take the lead of them, and either palm another, nor in transit across the water, ever wet as much as my ankles." Then he and Fama entered the fjord, and wrestled the youngster and clasped his arms around him and got him just flush with water, and he dealt him a stroke with Kolber's sword and took his head. Letting the boy go with current flushed up, Cu Chulainn entered the stronghold and hurled it, and then he and Ethel fired it and let it be burning brightly, and then turned about Retens in their steps through Sabfrid, not forgetting to carry with them the heads of Nishaserin's sons. Soon they saw the front of them a herd of deer, and the boy sought to know where those numerous and restless cattle. Egbert explained that they were not cattle, but a herd of wild deer, and that keep the dark glens of Sevefort. For he began to urge the goad and houses in their direction. Did so, but the king's fat horses could not attain the journey company which had conducted deer. Cu Chulainn dismounted, and therefore, by sheer running and mere speed, captured the moor two stags and the greatest bull, which he had made fast to the chariot with thongs. So he had a course for Aramacca, and by and by, nearing it, perceived a certain flock of the whitest swans. The boy asked were the pet birds or wild. They learned that they were wild swans which used to congregate from rocks in the islands of the sea, and, for feeding's sake, infest the country. Cu Chulainn questioned further and wished to know what the rare thing to bring some of them back to Aramacca alive or bring them dead. Egbert did not hesitate and said to bring them back living would be the more credible by far, for you may find plenty to bring back dead, perhaps not one of them to be bred in living. Into his sling Cu Chulainn laid a little stone, and with it cast out 8 swans of the number. Again he loaded this with the larger stone, and now brought down 16. "Driver, bring along the birds," he said. But Ivor hesitated. "I hardly can do that." "And why not?" said the boy. "Because if I quit my present position of the horses, speed and action being what they are, the chariot wheels would cut me into pieces, else the stag's antlers would pierce outwards wounds in me. No true word out thou, Egbert, but come, the horses and I will gaze upon and look, then there shall bark the reticent pace. As for the guise that I will bend upon the stags, they will scoop their heads for awe." And thus Erveshin down and retrieved the swans, with more than thongs and ropes secured to the chariot. In this manner they covered the rest of the way to Aramacca. Luthrum, daughter of Abram, messenger of the king, perceived them now and cried, "A solitary chariot fighter draws near to thee, O Cobra, and terribly he comes." The chariot graced with the bleeding heads of his enemies. Beautiful white birds he had with his chariots bear him company, and wild unbroken stags, bound and tethered to the same. Indeed, if measures be not taken to reprieve him prudently, in the best of Ulstermen must fall by his hand. "I know that little chariot fighter," Culver said. "The little boy is my sister's son, who this very day went to the border. Surely he would have reddened his hand, and should not fiery timely met, and all of Mackenzie men would perish by him." And last they hit upon the method and ablet of his manly rage, the result of having shed blood. And it was this that Aramacca's women, all 60 in number, bared their bosoms, and without superfage of any kind, trooped out to meet him. Their moreover being based on Cu Chulainn's well-known modesty, which is like all other qualities, was excessive. The little fellow leaned his head against the rail of the chariot and shut them from his sight. Then was the desired moment. All unawareness, he was seized and soused in a vat of cold water ready for the purpose. In this first vessel, the heat generated by his immersion was such that the staves of hops flew asunder instantly, and the second vat of water escaped by boiling over. And yet a third water was still hotter than the one could bear. By this time, however, the little boy's fury had died down in him. From crown to sole, his blush and beautiful pink red all over, and they clad him in his festive clothes. Thus his natural form and feature were restored to him. A beautiful boy indeed was that, 7 toes on each foot. He had, and on either hand as many fingers, and his eyes were bright with 7 pupils apiece. Each one glinted with the 7 gems like sparkles. On either cheek he had 4 moles, a blue, a green, and a yellow one. Between one ear and the other he had 50 clear, yellow, long tresses that were as yellow as the wax of bees, or like broth of white gold that glints in the sun unobtrused. He wore a green mantle, silver clasped upon his breast, a gold-tilted shirt, and a small boy took his place between Comper's knees, and the king began to stroke his hair. Now, the stripling, who by the time he was 7 years old had completed since his birth, he had done such deeds, had destroyed the champions by whom 2/3 of the Ulstermen had fallen unavenged, I hold. Said Feldermaca Felber, the narrator, that there is a scant room for wonder, though at 17 he comes to the border and kills a man, or 2 or 3 or 4, all in the cattle raid of Cully. And that is the boyish deeds of Cu Chulainn.